Hello, I'm Malta, a product director here at Shopify and the founder of Utopia. Today, I'm going to be taking you on a guided tour of the Hydrogen Visual Editor. It is a visual editor for our hydrogen projects using React and Remix. Uniquely, the Hydrogen Visual Editor uses code, your code, as the source of truth. All visual edits result in small, clean code changes. It is also a collaboration platform. Our goal is for your whole team to be able to work together, not in sequence. And today I'm going to be showing you how the Hydrogen Visual Editor makes this possible. First, let's take a quick tour. If you've used other visual design tools or site builders, a lot should feel familiar. In the center here, on an infinite scrolling canvas, you have the page that you're currently building or editing. Here we have one loaded already. I can zoom in or zoom out to have an easier overview. If I click here, I can enter live mode. In live mode, you're interacting with the real running page. And this means I can do things like navigate, for instance. If I click on this pin, it takes me to this page here. You can see there is a live animation running, and there's other content. I can exit live mode and go back to editing. Let's also navigate back to our previous page. On the left here, you have the navigator. The navigator represents the structure of the page. As you can see, if I hover over things, the corresponding outline on the canvas appears. I can also click to select. And similarly, if I select things on the canvas here, they are highlighted in the navigator too. Let's select this div here. On the right-hand side, we have the inspector. The inspector lets you configure your selection. As you can see, we have a number of options here. So if we bring this all together, let's take this div, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it larger here. Now, we're going to increase the gap here between the different items, and I can do this directly visually on the canvas. Something like that looks good. As you can see, this also updated here in the inspector. And finally, I can do things like change the layout. So for instance, we can have these right aligned here. If I'm not happy with my changes, I can simply press Command Z to undo one step at a time. But this isn't only a visual tool. It reads, writes, and understands code too. To show you this, let's bring in the code editor. By clicking here, I can see a miniature version of it. It's kind of like a mini-map. If I now select something, we can see the corresponding item highlighted in the code editor here too. It works in reverse as well. So if I click here, the corresponding item on the canvas and in the navigator lights up. Now, if I'm working on a lot of code or just want to have a better overview or work on a small screen, I can also magnify this. So now I can make edits in here. Let's quickly show you how design and code update each other in real time. To do that, I'm going to take this line here and I'm going to be editing its text. I'm going to change this to for building. And you can see the text in here and the code editor updates right away. Now I'm going to take this and just using the arrow key, I'm going to move it down on this list. And as you can see, it's now updated here as well. I can also go in here and delete this text and the component that's in entirely. As you can see, it is now gone from the canvas and also from here. Again, Command Z to undo. Once I'm happy with my changes, I can visit the GitHub tab. The GitHub tab shows me the list of files that have changed, and I could now commit these and push them directly to the branch that they're on. I could also revert the changes, or if there are changes upstream that maybe someone else has prepared for me, I can also pull these in. In this case, we don't have any. So we've talked a bit about code, and later we'll be showing you how you can use code to create a smoother editing experience for your whole team. But for now, let's assume I'm a non-technical team member, no code editor for me. Now, my goal here is to build a new featured product page for our tote bag that we're about to launch. And to do that, I'll navigate over to the Pages tab. The Pages tab shows favorites, basically pages that I'm frequently or recently working on, as well as all the other routes in my project. And there is a lot of them. What I'll do here is I'll insert a new route based on a page template. In this case, the featured product page sounds good. I'll click that. And as you can see, we've now been navigated to this. It's selected a default random name. I'll change that later. And it's also given me already a section here to work with. If I hit my navigator, I can actually see that. Here's our section. It's empty, but there's also a superimposed header as well as a footer below. They're not even editable for me here because we use those on all pages. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is to add a couple more sections. Let's do that by simply grabbing one of these and duplicating it, Command D, and Command D again. Now, for this to resemble a featured product page, the first thing I'm going to want to do is to swap out this empty section with a ready-made component that we use in other places, this hero section. Now, the hero section is being used to display information about the product, and this is actually dynamically pulled from the contents of this page so that it picks it for this particular product. As you can see, it also has some interactivity. If I hit play mode and click, for instance, on this accordion, I can unfold that out or fold that back in. So let's go back to edit mode. Well, it's easy to insert a predefined custom component, but what I now want to do is to go a little bit more granular and build myself a user testimonial or review section here. In order to do that, I select the section, and I now go in here and select this column with placeholders component. So that's a simple column. There's two placeholders. I can grab one of these, maybe add a few more and delete it. The first thing I'm going to do here is to give myself a bit of padding to work with. And the second thing I'll do here is I know I want a centered layout, so I'm going to use this column component to center all of the content that's inside it. I can do that here with the inspector. Now, I have these placeholders in here. What I'm going to do with the first one is I'm going to swap this out for a heading. To do that, I can go into here, and you can see we have a bunch of predefined headings available to me. I'm going to pick the largest one that we have. So I have this lorem ipsum here, and I'm going to rename this to "Don't Take Our Word for It." So that's good. It's correctly spaced. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a specific statistics component for our reviews here. To that, I select this other placeholder, and I can now swap this out to a custom review statistics component. I'm going to pick the one with no icon. And the first thing you'll notice is that it's really quite close to this other one here. So in order to fix that, what I'll do is I'll select the column, and there's this gap slider that I can use to simply give ourselves a little bit of gap. That's better. As you can see, this review statistics component has an empty slot for an icon. And if I click on that, I can select the star component here. In the future, we might have other icons. For now, it's just this one, and it's been configured, so basically I can just choose, do I want this icon there or not? So I click it, we have our star, and now we can move on to actually building the next section that has a few of these sort of featured testimonials, featured product reviews that have been picked for this particular product. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to select this section component again, and into it, I'm going to insert another column. I want a column because I have this vague idea that I want a sort of column-based layout for these reviews. So a column with placeholders it is. Now, I'm a visual kind of person. I like to see a little bit what I'm working towards, and in this case, we have a specific review card component that we use all over our site whenever we display these customer testimonials. It's part of our design system, really. So I can go in here and find that, navigate to it, enter to insert it. Now there's one of them. I'm going to delete this other placeholder here, because what I really want is 6 of these. To do that, select it, Command D to duplicate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As you can see, this column automatically expands, and the section that it's part of also expands. Now, in order to move on from this, actually I think there might be 7 here, but no issues. I'll simply select one of them, delete it. So in order to move on from here though, I don't want them all in one column. In fact, I want them in 2 columns. And the way to do that is by first giving this a maximum height. Let's try 1200 pixels. As you can see, that works nicely, but by default the content here overflows. In order to stop that, I can simply force this to wrap, and now we have 4 of these in the first column, 2 of these in the second column. There's an easy way to fix that. If we give these a bit of padding, then we can see that they're now a little bit more evenly spaced. The next thing I can do here is I can take this column, and I want everything really to be aligned to the right of the screen, but I already have these columns wrapping. So the easiest way for me to get all of this to sort of be more tightly aligned to the right is to actually take this column, right click on it, and wrap it into a row. Here's an empty row. It's again just a standard component that we use everywhere in this project and that I can use here to make my life a little bit easier. So now they are in a row, which forces them to sort of compress towards the left side of the screen because that's where text normally starts. But I can also use this justify property here to force it to all align to the right. Now the final thing here is I'm not quite happy how this pushes up really against the edge of the screen. So in order to change that, I can simply use our standard padded property here for this row, and now everything is a little bit more in set. So this is already good. As a final visual flourish though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a spacer here before the first one so that the layout is a little bit staggered. It's just visually a little bit more interesting like that. To do that, I select the column and I search for the spacer. There it is. By default, you can see it gets sort of added to the end here. What I can now do with this is I can simply drag it, move it up to the top. There we are. And now, as you can see, the spacer is here. It's basically invisible. And the other reviews are sort of nicely staggered after this. Now that we've designed this page, one of the things that stands out is that there's really no data in it. It's all static content. Whether we're talking about the number of the reviews here or whether we're talking about these. In fact, let's have a look at these. You can see this is a review card. It has 3 props, a quote, a customer name, and a background color. So I can change this to accent, or to white, or to black. But that's not really what we're after here. Instead, what we want to do is we want to generate one of these cards for each of the reviews that we have available to us. So in order to do that, let's actually select all of these here. I can just shift click to select them, delete them, and now we're left just with this one single card. I'm going to change the color here back to white. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this review card and I'm going to wrap this in a list. Like before, I pick wrap in, and I can simply type in here list. So now we have a list of them. Let's take a quick look at what this does. The first thing you'll notice is that we have this list here in the component. If I look at the inspector for it, I can see it has a list source and it has a contents. The contents is just a review. And you can see that this list source is basically repeating this 3 times. Now we can even look at our code here, and we can see that basically this list is 1, 2, 3. And that also means it's the simple array, so I can simply go in here and add a 4th one, for instance. And now there's 4 of these list items. Notice also how in the navigator, these repeated items that come from this generator effectively are numbered, so it's a little bit easier for me to cross-reference them, especially if the layout is a little bit busy. So let's hide our code editor again. We have the list selected, and so the first thing I can do now is I can click on this list source. The list source gives me this data picker. In this data picker I can select different types of data, and I can also see that the data that I can actually select here is already highlighted for me. It looks different from the other ones. And that's because lists, or arrays in technical terms, have a specific format, and only a list is compatible with the list item here that we're rendering. So let me select that. I can have a sneak peek at what's inside. You can see there's 6 items in it, starting at 0. Each one of them contains a quote and a customer, an ID, and also a background. We'll get more into those later. So let me hit apply. And the first thing you'll have noticed here is that now we have 6 of these reviews. The second thing you'll notice, if we zoom in a bit, all of them still have the same text. And that's because so far all we've done is generate a list based on this list source that then repeats these 6 review cards exactly as they're written 6 times. So what I want to do next is I want to select one of these review cards. It doesn't actually matter which one. And now what I can do is I can click on the quote here and hit this blue plus button. And what this allows me to do is it opens the data picker again. And now I can select this list item here. And I can pick one of these 3 selectable things. The first one is a quote, the second one is an ID, and the third one is a background. Now, what I'm looking for here is obviously a quote, so let's pick that. And I can also see that actually what I'm after here is probably not the quote itself, but the value. We can see this is a quote. That looks like just the thing here. Now, if I click on that, what I'll also notice now is that each one of these cards contains a different review, because what we've done is we've connected the quote property of this card to the quote value of the list item. The list item is generated automatically for us. It's basically the thing that is in this list. Now I can do the same here with the customer. Again, I pick the list item, I pick the customer this time, and now I pick the value. Lynn W, that was the name of our first customer, so that looks right. So I apply that, and now you can see each one of these items has a different customer name. Finally, we have this visual flourish. There's this background color here, and when the data was prepared for us by the engineers, they already made it so that some of these list items, perhaps ones that we want to stand out particularly, get a different color. So I can go in here, again pick the background, select the list item, and then pick the background, and that looks like it's a string, so that's the one I can use here. And now the first one of these is black, the second, third, and fourth get their normal color, and the fifth one is presented in its accent color. So what we've done here is we've created a list. The list iterates over these reviews, and each one of them is now driven by data. And that's to the point where if we change that data in our CMS, or in this case in meta objects, that data will propagate all the way into this page. There we are. We have data on our page, we're using it to generate a list, and we're even pulling it in from an external content management system. But what if the data isn't correct? Now, to make an update, you would need to open a new tab, navigate to the system that's holding it, find it in there, make the change, and publish it. But if you're using a tool like a visual editor, surely there ought to be a faster way of doing this. Well, we thought so too, and so we've built one. And to show it to you, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Balázs.
Hello, I'm Balázs, Utopia founding team member and senior staff developer here at Shopify. Today I'm going to show you how you can edit data using Utopia. So we've been able to build this page and add data to it. Here's the review card that we previously connected to data. But what if the data isn't up to date? I know it's coming from our CMS. We are using Shopify's meta object in this instance, but where does it live? We know that large sites are really brought to life by your data, but often your CMS is a whole separate system. So let's see what we can find out. I'm going to right-click on the testimonial text here. As you can see, it gives me 3 options. I can replace the data, that's what we just did previously. Or I can edit the value, or I can open it in an external CMS. Let's see what happens if I click it. As you can see, I just jumped to the source of the data, in this case, the meta object inside Shopify's admin page. Let's make a small change to the name here and let's see what happens. So I saved my change here. Let's go back to the hydrogen visual editor. After a quick refresh, you can see that my name shows up here. But there is a third option here. I can edit the value right here to make change to the data. As you can see, I get some information about the data and I need to click to confirm to request that update. That's because we know a CMS is often also powering your live store. So let's make a change here and see what happens. As you can see, you need to confirm that you actually want to publish this change. After just a moment, the review text updates. Let's go back to the CMS to see what changed. I'm going to hit refresh. You can see that my change has been pushed here as well.
Let's start by zooming in on this promise card component here. It has lots of props that can be configured in the inspector, but this also makes it a bit overwhelming, especially when you are in a rush or don't read code fluently. Here we are going to be showing you how to improve this, and the best part, we can do it in small, incremental steps. The first step is to open the Annotations file. We do that by clicking here. As you can see, I already prepared an empty Annotations entry for promise card. First, let's fill it up with some annotations for its properties. Here, I'm going to add an annotation for the color property, which makes it a segmented control. The control for icon is going to be a pop-up list, which makes it a drop-down. For border radius, I'm gonna insert the slider control. Let's see if it works. Now I have every control filled in, but it is still a bit overwhelming. There are some controls which are not as important as others. Let's put them in a folder. You can see 3 of my controls have been added to the advanced folder, which I can open and close. When you are working in a large project, having a tree structure that's easy to follow can really make everyone's life easier. So we can also change out the icon shown in the navigator. Here you can see that I turned the icon for promise card into a star. I can also use icons in my segmented control. That's pretty cool. Many components take children, so you can easily nest them, but not this half and half component. As you can see in code, it takes 2 render props, props.left and props.right. It would be nice if we could try Utopia about this. If I jump into the annotations for half and half, I can do just that. We can see that the navigator updates, and you can see what children are fed into the props.left property and what children are fed into the props.right property. As you can see in this annotation, I also set the preferred contents for these children, which means that if I delete and try to replace the element, I see this nice pre-filled list of options that are coming from the annotations file. If I don't find what I'm looking for in the preset options, I can always click on More and then browse all of the components of this project. Because half and half is just a simple component that lays out its children, we don't need to show all the standard styling options over here. So let's hide them. You can write these annotations for absolutely any component, even components imported from node modules. If you look over here, we already written annotations, for example, all of the hydrogen components.
And with that, back to the studio.
Well, folks, that about wraps it up here for today. We hope you've enjoyed seeing the Hydrogen Visual Editor in action, and how your technical and non-technical teams can use it. We think it's going to make building for headless so much faster, better, and more collaborative too. And we can't wait to see what you'll build with it. Until next time, goodbye for now.